This is Sarah Dicky. It's September 20th, 2012. I'm here with Joseph Ashcroft. It's about 1:30 p.m. And we're here to talk about Sterling Strauser. So, Professor Ashcroft, could you just introduce yourself and maybe how you knew Sterling?
Sure. Again, I'm Joseph Ashcroft. I'm a professor in communication studies at East Stroudsburg University. Actually, I basically grew up living immediately next to him on Antelope Street. Our family in 1954, when I had just finished first grade, moved from Maryland, where we were living, to East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and we bought the house at 156 Antelope Street, so that's where we were living. At 154 Antelope Street, immediately next door, was Sterling Strauser. So since the end of first grade, really until his death, I knew him fairly well. Almost all of my brothers and sisters, myself included, were subjects of his paintings. He's painted us as some of his things. And he was a very close friend of the family, both my mother and father. My father died about 10 years after we moved in to East Stroudsburg. My mother lived a fairly long time, so they were fairly close friends. And so basically that's how I knew him, and I always admired him. And as I got to be more of an adult and could carry on intellectual conversations, he was a really fascinating guy, both his opinions about art and politics and philosophy. So we often would talk about a wide range of things.
And you said that you were a subject of his painting?
Yes. Actually, I'm only basing this on what he said. I don't want it to sound like it's egotistical because I have no ego involved in it. But he actually thinks his best painting was the painting he did of me. I've been trying to track it down for a lot of years. I know where it is. It's in Philadelphia, in the house of the granddaughter of Edward Dreby, who ran Pocono Produce for many years. And when he died, he left the painting to her. So I know where it is. But yeah, he painted a painting of me. He called it Joey. I was 11 years old, a very skinny kid. I was just in shorts. The shorts were hanging down just enough to protect anything too embarrassing to be visible. But it was one of those paintings. But it ended up winning art shows back then, and then Ed Dreby, the guy who ran Pocono Produce, bought it and stuck it in his office. So over the years, when I wanted to see it, I would have to go over and visit Ed Dreby in Stroudsburg at Pocono Produce and go up to his office, and there it was right behind his desk. It eventually ended up in Florida when the Drebys sold their business and retired to Florida. But it did make its way back about 10 to 15 years ago, when there used to be a gallery on Main Street that had a big retrospective of Strauser's works, and Drebys allowed that to be a part of it. They set it up. So, I've seen it, but yeah, he did paint it. He just called it Joey.
And did he do that like at his house, or did you? I know that he was in an art group that sometimes.
Yeah, no, this was at his house. My memory is, and this could be a false memory, but my memory is that it was a nice warm summer day, and certainly the fact that I was only wearing shorts and not even any shirt would indicate it was probably warm. Mm-hmm. And my memory is that he set the easel up in our backyard and just sketched it out and painted it there so that it was outside. But right in Antelope Street. And
what was his house like? Because I've heard that he had lots of paintings kind of laying
cluttered.
about.
Yeah, it was cluttered. You'd walk in and there were paintings everywhere, and you would have to call it a cluttered house. There was like some clearness for a table to be able to eat food on, but in almost every corner there were paintings, because he was also a big promoter of the arts. Besides his own work, he's known as actually being one of the major people who really got the American folk art, especially the Pennsylvanians, that became well known in the American folk art music, or paintings, I'm sorry, not music, but in museums and stuff. Like Jack Savitsky has paintings in the Whitney Museum in New York, and Strauser discovered him. And Justin McCarthy, who also has paintings in the American Museum of Folk Art, and I think in the Whitney, he also discovered him. So if you ever pick up a book about American folk art, you're likely to find somewhere in there references to Sterling Strauser, but in there it's not about Strauser's paintings. It's about the fact that he was discovered many, especially Eastern Pennsylvania American folk artists, and because of his contacts, kind of got them exposed to the art world in New York City and so on.
Yeah, I've heard that he is very influential. Did he influence you in any way?
Well, just in terms of general thinking about art and stuff, he didn't. I'm not an art. I don't paint or anything. He had no particular artistic influence on me, other than the appreciation of art. Mm-hmm. Because I think I do. We have art all over our own houses, and we, supported the arts over the years. So I would say that would be his biggest influence.
And how do you react to his paintings? Like, I know that you have a few of his, correct?
Right, we do. We donated the biggest one of his we had last year to the Duteau Museum in Delaware Water Gap, so they have it as part of their permanent collection. And that was a rather large painting of the deer he called it Jazz Rehearsal Deerhead Inn, 1963. That was the title of the painting. But we do have others of his works. We're selling this house in December, so we're beginning to take artwork off the wall. So they're kind of like, we have them stacked in corners right now too. But we still have a number of his works. But we did give that one to the Duteau, so I don't have it. I can show you before you leave some of the ones that we do have.
Okay. And you said obviously he's very predominant in the area.
Right.
Now, what do you remember of him then as kind of being, I know he showed a lot of his work and he was influential. Do you remember going to any of his shows when you were younger? Or?
Yeah, sometimes, but mostly because, I could just go over to his house anytime and see his art. He often would allow me to watch as he was painting various scenes. And his house was a kind of interesting place. Some of the... at the time, as a young person, you wouldn't have known some of these people, but even actors at the time who were pretty well known, who were interested in his works, would come to his house, and sometimes he'd bring them over and introduce them to our family. And then other fairly well-known artists would, come out. The guy who donated the works to, I don't think I ever met him, but he was a regular, would come up and buy them, and he ended up donating them to Strasbourg University because, Strauser lived here. So his house was a regular kind of people visiting all the time, and sometimes you could get to meet them. So it was a kind of nice little hubbub. But I don't have memories of going to like big art shows of his because I used to see his art.
Yeah, you saw it right next door.
And sometimes I'd be out in the yard and he'd say, "Hey Joe, I just did a couple of new ones. Do you want to take a look at them?" And that kind of thing. So that was more how I would see his art. I'd see stuff as he was either making it or had just painted it.
And you said, did you know that he had a garage down the street that I guess he stored a lot of his artwork in?
Yeah, up behind. It was on Stemple Street, up behind. It was like across and up Stemple Street. He had a garage up there.
Had you ever been there?
There I hadn't gone too often. I usually would go to his house, but I would see him coming down from the garage or going up to it a lot. Mm-hmm. I probably was there once or twice, but my memories are a little vague on whether I was there that often. More often, I remember I was in his house a lot.
And what would you say, as a simple person in the community, what were his likes? Do you know anything about that? Like who he was, as a man?
Well, I remember him being an exceptionally friendly person. He was certainly, you had a situation where, he and his wife are living there, and the house next door, I guess, was empty, and so a family buys it in 1954, and they have 9 kids. You know what I mean?
It's a lot.
So, you could have, in that situation, you could see where you could have neighbors who would not be very open or friendly, but they were always very warm and friendly. Maybe he saw that we were all new subjects to be painted, I don't know. But he was always very friendly, I remember that. And so I remember more as this warm, great neighbor. I don't know if I can see if I can track this one down right now. I can give you an example of the kind of neighbor he was. I don't know if this is down here. One day, my mom had been ill, with a big case of the flu and whatever, and he was aware of that. So one day he came over with a small painting of a balloon, right? Mm-hmm. And he handed it to my mom, but he had written a note on the back. My mom's name was Anne, to give you a lift. Oh. And he signed it Sterling. But that was the kind of thing he'd do. He just gave her a painting because he knew she was ill, and there was a painting of a balloon and give you a lift or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, and that one, my mom actually, she left different Strausers, because she had quite a few, to different ones, but that one she actually left to me. So we may have already moved it to one of our other houses, because I thought it would have been stacked right out there, but I don't see it.
Let's see. And you said that you've never, dabbled in the arts. You've just
No, I'm
just
not.
been a collector.
Just really enjoyed them, all the various arts, but never. I wasn't a musician, or didn't sing or paint or sculpt or anything.
No.
But I've grown up with a real appreciation of the arts and do support the arts, and especially like to support local artists. And I trace it all pretty much back to him being a pretty influential guy in the neighborhood that made me really appreciate art. So.
Good. And now you said that your mom became quite close friends with them.
Mm-hmm.
And did you did they come over for dinner a lot? And
not so much that. I mean, he and Dorothy would say hi and do some things for her, but there wasn't the kind of dinner. They weren't such close friends that they were constantly having dinner together. There might have been a few lunches here and there where they'd have lunch together, but. Once my father died and they knew she was alone, I think they occasionally, some of the children were still around, although as we got older, we all moved away, but they maintained, pretty good friendship. But it wasn't the kind of thing of having dinner together and all that kind of stuff. But.
And have you been up to see the gallery they put together?
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
what
impressive.
are your?
Well, I thought it was pretty nice. Not just nice. I thought it was impressive. A lot of. It shows you the wide range of work and somewhat how he changed over the years. And I think I think it's quite a coup for East Stroudsburg University to have it.
Yeah, I think it's great that they get to experience his artwork. He was very influential, and a great person, as you've said. Is there anything else that I should have asked you? Anything?
Well. I guess nothing is specifically is occurring to me. I mean, it's. I do have one I can show you that was kind of interesting. It might be a little interesting anecdote as you're putting this stuff together. My partner and I were coming up on an anniversary, and I wanted to kind of surprise her and give her a nice gift. So I thought, she had grown to appreciate, even though she didn't know him when she was younger. She obviously knew him through me once we were adults. I thought, well, maybe I'll go and buy one of his paintings and surprise her by giving her this painting. So, he was, open to that, and he wanted to show me a few. And he finally got to this one, and he said, this one's kind of interesting, Joe. He said, I had never put a full date on any of my paintings. He would do Strauser and the year, or Strauser, and sometimes he might put a month/year. He said, but I had never put a full date on a painting until this one, which had been painted actually at the time I was buying it, only a year or so earlier.
Okay.
And he said, you know why I did this? And I didn't know. He said, this was the day I got out of Pocono Hospital after my first round of chemotherapy and radiation treatments for my prostate cancer. And I was so happy to be out of the hospital, I decided to put the precise date on it. So I actually have the painting that he very first put a date on it. So
oh, that's interesting.
I have this
Let me
one
just
right
pause
out.
real quick.
Go ahead.
Will you start over so I can
Sure,
record?
yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay, this is a painting. You got the point about the date.
Yeah, the date is all good.
Okay, this would be as if you were down near Pocono Cinema looking up through the opening towards the front of Dansbury Depot.
Okay.
And it was during the spring because you can see the flowers and the blossoms are out. Mm-hmm. And the date you can tell because, let's see. You can see over there in that corner.
Oh, right here, yeah.
You see what he did?
Mm-hmm.
What is it, 4/27?
27/1991.
Well, he told me, when I bought this from him, and as he told me, that's the very first time in his history,
Career.
and it was 91. And he told me he did it because it was his first day out of the hospital after chemotherapy. So, anyway, this one we thought we would donate if they ever get that museum thing, because it is a painting of Dansbury Depot, and it has some historical significance.
And you can tell, that he was obviously happy. He
yeah,
painted it with blossoms, and it's, it's a beautiful
it's a very
painting.
bright up thing. Yeah, yeah. You've seen his work, so you're familiar with his style. So, yeah. So that's that was kind of an interesting little part of it. Now, I had noticed, by the way, as he got into the later 90s, there were more paintings that he put the full date on. So this isn't the only one, but he told me it was the very first time he'd ever done it. And I have to say, having seen, including the 100 and some that were up there, and the Reading Museum of Art about 10 years ago had a massive retrospective on Strauser where there were hundreds of his paintings, and I looked for paintings in which there was
the whole date,
and there never was. So I'm thinking that because he told it to me fairly contemporaneously to when he painted it, because I bought that from him around, it was either maybe the summer or fall of '91.
So yeah, a short period after.
Yeah, because June is our anniversary, so I probably would have been buying it
just before that.
Right then. So in other words, he would have painted it probably just a month or two earlier. So it was a really contemporaneous comment that he made. So I'm not, I think it makes it kind of unique.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think, I know that he was a cancer survivor, and do you think that affected his artwork in any way?
Well, obviously as he got older, his eyes, I think, affected his artwork more than I think his cancer did. You can see in his really later works that the kind of sharpness isn't there, and I think that had more to do with his eyes getting worse. So my feeling is it wasn't so much the cancer; it was the eyesight began to fade, and so some of his really later paintings are very vague. I'd say there isn't a lot of sharp detail in them.
And I know he did like a lot of still lifes. What would you say, was really like the main thing that he painted that he was really interested in?
He definitely had a major theme with various flowers. I mean, he had all kinds of floral arrangements. He did that a lot. But in all honesty, Dansbury Depot was one of his major themes. There's a large part of his work that are constantly painting that train station from in the winter, in the spring, in the summer, from different angles and different ways. He always seemed fascinated by that. So I would say probably floral kinds of things would be near the top of the list, but not right up there too would be Dansbury Depot. And then he did do a lot of portraits. Like I say, he did portraits of just about everybody in my family, but you even see in the retrospect, in the collection ESU now has, there's a lot of portraits in there over the ways. He did a fair number of nudes, but I would say they were still kind of, in a sense, you put him in the portraiture category. But he was interested in that, so he had some. Most obviously, they were mostly nudes of females. I think he was more interested in the female form than the male form. But.
And do you think, I know he worked full time. So did he do like a lot of his paintings? Would he paint like when he got home at night? Like how long it maybe take him to finish a painting, or?
Well, because I was going to school during the day, I probably wouldn't. Obviously, he had time off at times in the summer, because I remember him during the day painting in the summer. But I'm guessing he mostly painted on weekends and probably in the late afternoons, and because he worked. Now, of course, remember he did live a fairly long life after he retired, and he therefore then had a lot of time. And he was still fairly actively painting until as he got closer to his death. I think he slowed down a little bit, but certainly in his after retirement, he had lots of time to paint.
And did he have like a studio in his house, or where did he do
had
all
a
his
little
painting?
garage out, a little like shed behind his house. But I think he saved some space to paint in there, but it was mostly storage. You often would see him outside. Especially on nice days with his easel, and he would be painting. Or he would take it places. Like he painted a number of the houses. Let's see, I think it's the Presbyterian Church. You know where that is? Smith. If you're coming down Smith Street towards Antelomic, can you imagine that? If you're coming down, Smith is the one that runs down from the library.
Okay,
and you're going away from campus. So Smith would run from the tennis courts.
Yeah, I know where you mean.
Down in front of Kaler, it goes in front of the library. If you head down there, right before you get to the end, otherwise you'd be in the woods. Yeah. You make a left on his street.
I know where that is, yeah.
Well, right before you get to Antelomic, on the left side there's a church. There was the parking lot there. He would sometimes, he painted a lot of those houses along there. I don't have any of those works, but that was a very common scene for him. So he would walk up and set up his easels and paint in those areas. So he painted outside a lot.
And do you remember anything about his wife?
Well, she was a little more, he was very outgoing, so you could always engage with him. She was always polite and friendly, but she wasn't as engaging, you know what I mean? She was a little bit more aloof. But if he was inviting us over to the house, she'd say hi, but it wasn't like she'd carry on a very long conversation was. He'd be showing me around, showing different things, and she'd be kind of in the background. So she was always friendly, but it was a kind of aloof kind of friendliness. It wasn't this warm, embracing kind of friendliness that she was. He was very outgoing and very, very warm.
And did you ever have him paint anything for you? Like, did you ever commission him to do anything?
No, I didn't.
And do you know if that was something that he commonly did, or did he just kind of paint for, his own enjoyment?
I don't know the answer for sure, but I would think he probably did some commissions, but I would think it was a small amount, a small percentage of what he did. That's an opinion, though. I don't know the date on that. Somebody else might be able to know that a little bit better. But my general impression was that he just painted stuff that he wanted to paint most of the time.
And I guess we can wrap up now, unless I just want to know if you have anything else. You gave that little story about the date. Is there anything else that maybe I should have asked you that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we've covered most of it. I mean, I think he was, he was a great neighbor. That's what I remember, and a great. And as I got older and more mature, and even though he was older than me, but as you get older, the age difference doesn't matter as much. When you're a kid,
it's a big difference.
Now I'm a college professor and he's still alive, and it's kind of like, even though I'm younger than him by you kind of begin to more interact with him as an adult would to another adult, and whichever way, whether it was me as a kid interacting with him, or when it was more of an adult to an adult interaction, it was always very warm and friendly.
So you had like a fairly close relationship with him?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say he was certainly a friend, and I think if he would call me a friend, initially I was just the neighbor's kid, but I think we developed a kind of
friendship.
Yeah.
All right, well, great. I'm going to turn the recorder off now. Thank you so much for your